Welcome back to a new episode of the Leading Yourself podcast. This is going to be the third and last part of the series on the 10 tips to start 2025 strong. I know we're past the midpoint of January, but I'm hope that this series is resonating with you, and I have 4 more tips for you today that are going to wrap up this series on how to be more intentional in designing this next chapter of our lives. I always say every year is like a book with 12 chapters and 365 pages, and we get to write our story. But if we want to have an amazing year, we need to be intentional on how we design that year for ourselves and leave flexibility in the process because, as we know, life happens and will always do. So, with no further ado, let's kick off and wrap up this series on the 10 tips to have a strong start of 2025. Welcome to the Leading Yourself podcast. This is your host, Carolina de Arriba. I'm an HR professional, health and fitness coach, wife, mom, and above all things, a goal-getter. In this podcast, we're going to be digging into all things leadership, professional and career development, habits, and relationships. This is a podcast for those who want to become the best version of themselves. Those who have big dreams and are willing to embrace the journey and put in the work to achieve them. My goal is to share with you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you in your journey. So let's dig into today's episode. I mentioned this last week, but when I had this idea of doing the first podcast episode of the year being my top 10 tips to have a strong start of 2025, I knew 10 was a lot to cover in one episode, but I wasn't expecting it to turn into this rich of a conversation. And I'm so happy it did because that is the purpose, right? Is giving you the tools that you need to thrive, to give you the tools to become a better version of yourself, to have a great year. And I hope that you're enjoying this series as much as I am. So today is going to be the last part. As long as it takes, we're going to cover the last 4. But before we go there, I just want to take us through what we've covered so far. And if you're just joining here and you're like, okay, apparently I missed 2 parts before this, don't worry. You can keep listening and then go back to the other 2. It doesn't matter in which order you listen to the 3 episodes. At the end of the day, there are 10 tips. They're all equally important, right? I put them in a particular order for a reason, just the way my brain works and how I structure things. But again, the important thing is that you listen to all 3 and you get from it whatever you want to focus on. I'm not saying you should implement all these 10 things. These are 10 ideas. And what I would hope is that when you finish listening to this 3-part episode, you pick 1, 2, how many you want that resonate with you, that you think are the ones that are going to help you the most based on where you are today, and you take action around those ones that you pick. So let's recap. We started talking about tip number 1, get clear on your vision, right? We talk about having a vision for 2025. Tip number 2 was focus on the power of 1. We said in this world that glorifies multitasking and hustling, it's easy to feel like we have to do everything all at once, and we don't. Pick your 1 key priority in each area of your life. And sometimes doing less is more, right? That was what that tip was about. Then we said establish focus daily routines was tip number 3, and we talked about morning, afternoon, and night routines, and I give you some tips there. Then we went to number 4, which was win your morning. You know, you have heard me say this so many times. The way you start your morning sets the tone for the rest of your day. And I gave you tips on how to structure a morning routine that can serve you, whether you have 5 minutes or you want to invest a full hour in that morning routine. Tip number 5, we said prioritize your health. And I share with you a little bit of my journey last year and some of the things that I'm learning to demystify this topic because there's so much confusing information out there. So we cover the basics. I hope that was interesting. Also, both for my morning routine and my health tips, I shared some links of resources that I shared throughout the episode. I hope you check those out. Those are some of my favorite things that I incorporate in my morning routine and the things that are helping me become the CEO of my health. And then tip number 6 was the last one we covered last week. We talked about building a support system, the importance of community. And I offer to you as well that I am starting a Leading Yourself growth community this year. And I want to say it one more time. You are invited to join us. It's completely free. I'm going to put the link on the show notes of today's podcast episode one more time in case you want to join or just learn more about what this community can offer and whether it's the right community for you. Okay, so that's what we covered so far. And today we're going to dig into the last 4 tips. So let's start with tip number 7. Tip number 7 is set boundaries and say no. I want to start by saying this. Your time and energy are finite resources. They're not unlimited, right? They are finite resources. If you don't protect them, it's easy to get pulled into every direction, leaving very little room to what truly matters to you. So setting boundaries isn't about being rigid or unkind. It's about creating space for the things that bring you joy and fulfillment and time to make progress towards your goals, to the things that matter to you. When you say no to distractions, to unnecessary obligations, or to things that drain your energy, you're saying yes to yourself, to your priorities, and to the life that you want for yourself this 2025. So why do boundaries matter? I'm going to share 4 thoughts here. The first one I wrote down on my notes is to prevent burnout. Overcommitting can lead to exhaustion, to resentment, to lack of focus. Healthy boundaries create balance and prevent you from overextending yourself. The second reason is clarity and focus. When you're clear about your priorities, you can allocate your time and energy to what aligns to your values and your goals. But for that, you need boundaries. The third reason is stronger relationships. Yes, ironically, setting boundaries can improve your relationships. They create mutual respect and they ensure that your time together with whoever that relationship is, whether it is a family member, a spouse, your kids, friends, colleagues, it ensures that the time you spend together is meaningful. And then the last one is personal empowerment. Boundaries reinforce your self-worth. They're a statement that your time, your energy, and your well-being are valuable and deserve to be protected. So how do we define our boundaries? I want to go in here because sometimes we hear the word boundaries and we're like, okay, that's easier said than done. It's sometimes challenging, especially if you are a people pleaser. It can be really challenging to set boundaries. So I want to break it down and give you kind of a formula or a framework for setting boundaries. The first step for me always is to identify your priorities, to reflect on what truly matters to you in this season of your life, because that changes, right? What you're focused on in 2025 might be different on what was your top priority last year or 5 years ago. So consider your goals, your relationships, your health, your personal development. What activities or commitments help you grow and feel fulfilled? And then what drains your energy or pulls you away from your goals? I think those are 2 questions you can reflect on to really identify what truly matters and what is important and what is to be protected, right? We want to protect the things that help us grow, feel us fulfilled, energize us, right? And we want to put boundaries for those things that drain our energy and pull us away from our goals. The second step then is to understand your limits. It's to take note of situations that make you feel overwhelmed or maybe frustrated or depleted in your energy. These are signals that a boundary might be needed. So a couple of questions you can ask yourself is, are there tasks you've taken on that no longer serve you? Think about it. And the second thing to reflect on is, are there relationships where you feel overextended? Are there particular people that you feel that you're always overwhelmed, they're always overextended? Maybe because you have a stronger people pleaser tendency with that person in that relationship. So those are some ways of looking at and understanding where a boundary might be needed. And then the next step is to clarify what are your non-negotiables. What this means is decide what no longer you're willing to tolerate. Examples of this might include things like working late every day, or constantly being available for non-urgent requests, or sacrificing personal time for social obligations. So you need to kind of make a list, right, of what are your non-negotiables? What are the things that you no longer will tolerate? Because these are the things that are preventing you from feeling at your best, from giving your best, from focusing on what matters. So what are those things? And then it's about practicing the art of saying no. It's saying no. I know that can feel uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable to me, but I think it's still a skill worth mastering for all of us. And here's how we can approach it. And I include myself because this is an area where I need to double on my focus this year. But one is be direct and respectful. You don't need to over-explain or apologize excessively. I know I was that person that if I had to say no, I would speak for 5 minutes trying to justify why I couldn't, and I was super apologetic to the extreme. A simple and polite response is enough. That's what I've learned. An example is saying something, this is one of my go-to, thank you for thinking of me, but I'm unavailable or unable to take this right now. The second thing is to delay the response. Sometimes we get asked for something and we're not sure. So give yourself time to think about before you commit. I feel sometimes, and this happens to me, when someone asks me something, I feel I need to give an answer right there in the moment. And that is not true either. You can say something like, let me check my schedule and come back with you. And this is something that I'm learning to do more and more because I always have this urge to respond immediately. Another way to say no is to offer an alternative. If appropriate, and not always is going to be appropriate, suggest another way that you can help without overcommitting. Like maybe I can't volunteer for the entire thing, but I will be happy to help for an hour, for example. And then the last thing that I think is super important is to remember your why. When guilt or fear creeps in, it's important to remind ourselves of our priorities and the purpose behind our boundaries. And that is something that the more we remind ourselves, the more comfortable we're going to become with saying no to others. Okay, let's talk about some challenges that we will need to overcome when we start setting boundaries. The first challenge you're going to have to overcome, and I have to overcome, is the fear of disappointing others. It's natural to worry about letting people down, but remember that you can't please everyone. And saying yes to everything often leads to mediocrity instead of excellence. And I know that you want to do the best work that you can. When someone asks you to do something, you want to do it with excellence. But if you say yes to everything, then it's very hard to be excellent at everything. The next common challenge to overcome is about feeling guilty. When we set boundaries, sometimes we feel guilty because we're thinking about the impact to the other person. But let me tell you one thing I've learned, and a mentor helped me really unpack this. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're an act of self-care and ultimately allows you to show up better for others and for yourself. The other obstacle to overcome is pushback. Some people might resist your boundaries, especially if they're used to you always saying yes. And I think in that transition period, when you're implementing a new boundary, it's important to stay firm, but be compassionate at the same time. And it's important to explain why you're putting that boundary in place and why it's important to you. So, a few things on how to start. As always, start small. Choose one area of your life where you feel stretched too thin. This might be work or your family or obligations or other social commitments. And start small, just with that one area. The second tip is set clear limits. Define what you will and won't do in that area. For example, I will no longer check emails after 7 p.m. Or I will decline invitations that conflict with my personal recharge time. When I switched jobs, I think I share on an episode during that time, almost 3 years ago now, I saw that as an opportunity to set boundaries from the very beginning. It made it so much easier because no one had any experience working with me, but it was an internal battle still because I was used to work in a certain way. But, now looking back is one of the things I'm most grateful of is having set those clear limits for myself. The third tip is communicate your boundaries. A lot of times we think about these boundaries and we assume that because we know what our boundaries are, other people will know what our boundaries are. It's important to let others know your limits very clearly and kindly at the same time. And then it's important to practice self-reflection. At the end of each week, if you are in the process of implementing new boundaries, maybe reflect on how well you maintain your boundaries and where you might need to reinforce them, or maybe make adjustments in the boundaries themselves. Imagine you're working towards a fitness goal. I want to put just an example. A friend frequently invites you to late night outings and leave you too tired for the morning workout. So setting a boundary in that situation might mean explaining your priority. I've set a goal to work out in the morning, so I'm going to have to skip late nights for now. And then offering an alternative. I'd love to catch up with you maybe over the weekend. Maybe we can go for a coffee instead. That's an example of how you would set a boundary. Remember, setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about making space for the life that you want to create. By protecting your time and your energy, you give yourself the freedom to focus on what truly matters. So as you step into this week, and I know you probably already have set your goals for 2025, now maybe it's time to, on top of that, add and set some boundaries that will help you achieve those goals. Boundaries aren't barriers, they're bridges to your best self. I think that's a great shift in mindset. A lot of times when we think about boundaries, we think about building walls and barriers between us and others, or between us and something. But the truth is, boundaries are just bridges to our best selves. Okay, tip number 8, track and celebrate progress. progress is not just about hitting big milestones. And I hope that if you have set goals for 2025, you also have breaking it down into smaller steps and you have identified what are some of those milestones that you're going to have along the way. But when I talk about celebrating progress, what I'm talking is about recognizing and valuing the small steps that led you there. Tracking and celebrating your achievements is a powerful way to stay motivated, to build momentum, and also to remind yourself on how far you've come. Often we're so focused on the ultimate goal that we forget to appreciate the journey. So let's make 2025 a year where we appreciate the journey. Celebrating progress transforms the process into something joyful, not just a grind, right? It's an opportunity to pause, to reflect, to realign your efforts for even greater success. So why do tracking progress matters? Well, they provide clarity and focus. So tracking your progress can help you measure what really matters and clarify what's working, what is not working, where you need to make adjustments. The second reason why they matter is they give you a motivation boost. Seeing consistent progress, no matter how small, creates a positive feedback loop that encourages you to keep going. Let's say that you set a goal to lose weight this year. And so far, we are past mid of January when I'm recording this, you've lost 2 pounds. Okay, for some people, that might not be a big thing to celebrate, but if you celebrate the fact that you lost already 2 pounds, that motivates you to keep doing what you're doing, what it's working, to keep pursuing the goal of losing how many pounds you want to lose this year. Number 3 is accountability. Whether it's self-accountability or sharing your progress with a mentor, tracking keeps you honest and committed. And to be honest, I always like to celebrate with others or share that with others because that doubles on my accountability. So if you're working with a mentor or if you were to join our growth community, you would have this aspect of accountability and the ability to celebrate your wins with others that is going to double down on this benefit. And the last thing is it allows course correction. If something is not yielding results, tracking makes it easier to identify that and then give you the hints to pivot before you're wasting too much of your time and your effort. So a few tips on celebrating your wins. I think the first thing is you need to match the scale of your celebration with your achievement. Small win, small reward. Big win, big reward. The other thing is sharing your wins. Tell a friend, a mentor, an accountability partner about your progress. Sharing your achievements make them more real and help you build connections. This is one thing that you can get when you join our Leading Yourself growth community. You can also write down activities that bring you joy and use them as rewards. Have like a celebration list. Make a list of all the things or ways that you could use to celebrate. This might be a walk in nature, a date night with a loved one, buying you a new book or a new journal, or buying yourself a coffee. I don't know. Make a list of things that bring you joy. Have a list of maybe more simple, free things that you can do, and maybe a list of things where maybe you need to invest a little bit of money and you reserve those for bigger wins. Yeah, and then what are some action steps? Because I always want to leave you with action steps. So what I like to do is to have a weekly reflection. So at the end of each week, write down 3 things that I've accomplished, big or small. Then a monthly milestone checking, like every month, review your goals and reflect. What did I achieve that brought me closer to these goals? And then celebrate by doing something special. And then also very important is to track consistently. right? Make sure that you're constantly tracking your progress. Building that habit of tracking can go a long way. Tracking and celebrating progress it's more than just staying on course. It's about creating a lifestyle of growth, of joy, of gratitude. When you take the time to acknowledge your wins, you cultivate a mindset of abundance and possibility. And as you pursue your goals this year, don't wait for the finish line to celebrate. Progress is the real victory, and every small step deserves to be recognized. And by tracking and recognizing, you can turn every day into an opportunity to win and feel like you're winning and you're making progress. Okay, tip number 8 is embrace a growth mindset. Tip number 9, we're already number 9. Yes, we have 2 more to go. Tip number 9, embrace a growth mindset. Challenges and setbacks are a natural part of life, but how you approach them makes all the difference. A growth mindset isn't about avoiding difficulties, it's about facing them heads on with curiosity and with resilience. It's the belief that your abilities, your skills, your intelligence can be developed through effort, through learning, and through persistence. This mindset transforms roadblocks into stepping stones for growth. And here's how to lean into a growth mindset and use challenges as fuel to progress. The first thing is to reframe setbacks as opportunities. When things don't go as planned this year, it's going to be easy to get stuck or feel frustrated or feel self-doubt, but setbacks can often be your best teachers. So instead of labeling something as a failure, I'm going to invite you this year to ask yourself, what went wrong? What can I do differently next time? What did this teach me about myself, my skills, or even the approach that I'm taking? Remember, every step backwards is a chance to analyze, to adjust, and to sprint forward with more wisdom, more experience, right? Because now you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. The other way is to embrace constructive feedback. Feedback is often uncomfortable, but it's one of the most valuable tools for growth. People who adopt a growth mindset, they actively seek input from others, even when it's critical. So it's important that we shift our perspective on criticism. Instead of taking feedback personally, see it as a gift, a window into areas where you can grow. Ask for feedback proactively. Don't wait for a formal review or unsolicited advice. Reach out to mentors, to peers, to trusted colleagues, and ask them questions like, what is one thing I could improve on? What do you think I could do differently to achieve better results? And then apply what you learn. Feedback is only useful when it's followed by action. Treat it as an actionable insight to adjust your strategy accordingly. And then we talked about celebration, but I think it's about celebrating not only the outcome, but also the effort. A growth mindset thrives on recognizing progress over perfection. It's not about getting everything right the first time, but it's about showing up and growing and giving your best. So focus on the steps you're taking rather than the final results or only on the final result, and celebrate small wins along the way. We talked about this, like learning a new skill, overcoming a fear, making progress towards a goal. It's not always about the milestones. It's about these other things that it's also important to celebrate. Focus on continuous learning. A growth mindset is deeply tied to the pursuit of knowledge and self-improvement. So stay curious. Have an open mind. Read, listen to podcasts, take courses, engage in conversations that challenge your perspective. Remember that the most successful people see learning as a lifelong journey and not as a destination. So what are some next steps you can take? So next time that you encounter a challenge or a setback, I want to invite you to pause and ask yourself some questions. I'm going to give you 3. What can I learn from this experience? What skills or strategies can I develop so I can handle this type of situation better in the future? And then how can this setback serve me as a stepping stone towards my goal? I really encourage you to reflect on this, and maybe even you want to write it down and commit to one single thing that you're going to change based on what you learn. By taking this approach, I guarantee you're going to transform challenges into opportunities and setbacks into setups for success. Remember, a growth mindset isn't about thinking positively. It's about taking purposeful action, embracing the discomfort, and continuously strive to be better than you were yesterday. When you make this mindset a way of life, no challenge will be big enough to stop you. And every step forward will bring you closer to your goals. Okay, last one. Tip number 10. Infuse joy into the journey. I intentionally left this one for last. The path to achieving your goals isn't just about reaching the destination. It's about how you experience every step along the way. We kind of talked a little bit about this already. But infusing joy into your journey makes the process more sustainable and more rewarding. When you find ways to enjoy the work, you stay energized and motivated and connected to your why. Joy doesn't have to be big, dramatic addition. It's often found in the small moments, creating touches that make even the most mundane task feel like the most meaningful. Now, why do I say that joy matters? Why did I put this intentionally on my top 10 tips for a strong start of the year? Well, I believe that joy can increase resilience. When challenges arise, approaching them with a joyful attitude can help you to persevere with less stress. It can help increase and build your resilience. It can lead to better results. Joy fuels passion and fuels creativity, which often lead to more innovative solutions and higher quality outcomes. It can also help make motivation sustainable. Burnout happens when we focus too much on the grind and we forget to savor the progress, I believe. Burnout is not always about because we work too much. Is because we focus so much on the grind and we forget about to enjoy the process. And joy keeps us energized for the long haul. It also can enhance your well-being. There's a lot of studies out there, but when you prioritize joy, you're not just achieving your goals, but you're enhancing your overall quality of life. So, how can we infuse joy into our journey? Well, here's a few things that have worked for me and some that I'm trying right now. The first idea is to add playfulness to your task. Injecting a sense of play can really transform the most tedious task into something enjoyable. You can do this through gamifying your goals, like create a challenge for yourself, like competing for something, completing a task in a certain amount of time, or leveling up by leveling a new skill. You can use fun tools like bright color pens or sticky notes or different apps. You can also involve others. Trying something with others is always more engaging. So add playfulness to your task. Incorporate things that you love. Find ways to pair your task with activities or elements that you enjoy. It could be music or a podcast or your environment. Can you make any changes to that? Maybe depending on what you're working on, you go to a cozy coffee shop for the day, or you change your environment and you work outside if weather permits. The other thing is, we talked about this, but celebrating your small wins can also be a way of injecting joy. Another way is to break the routine, like be more spontaneous sometimes. Try something new, surprise yourself. And then very important as well is to shift your perspective. Sometimes joy It's about changing how you think about the task at hand and not the task itself. Focus on growth. Instead of seeing a task as an obligation, view it as an opportunity to grow. Reframe the hard parts. When something feels difficult, remind yourself of the value it brings to the bigger picture. When you infuse joy into your journey, the process becomes less about checking off boxes and more about living fully in the moment. You'll find that your progress feels richer, your energy is more sustainable, and your satisfaction, your level of personal satisfaction is deeper. Joy doesn't eliminate challenges, but it does change how you approach them. It reminds you that success isn't about the outcome. It's about the person that you become along the way and the memories that you create. So, my invitation for you this week is bring joy into your week. Add a joyful twist into something this week. Starting 2025 strong isn't about perfection. It's about being intentional and consistent. This 10 tips that we cover along the last 3 weeks can be your roadmap to creating a year of growth, of joy, and success. I want to remind you this. You have the power to design a life that you love and to make 2025 extraordinary. I hope that these 10 tips have inspired you to think about how can you have that strong start of the year. And I know, as I said last week, we're past January 1st, well past January 1st, and that is okay. You have 11 months left in the year to make this year meaningful. And what I want to ask you, and I would love to hear, if you want to send me an email, you can reach me at leadingyourself@icloud.com. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. If you send me a message sharing which of these 10 tips resonated the most with you and which one you're committing with yourself to implement so it helps you make 2025 a meaningful year. With that, I hope that you have an amazing week ahead, that you have an amazing and meaningful 2025. Thank you for joining me for this longer than usual series. But as I said at the beginning, I hope you found inspiration and something that you can go and implement to help you have the best year yet. And last but not least, remember the invitation is open for you to join our growth community. You will find all the details on the show notes of today's podcast episode. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you again next week on another episode of the Leading Yourself podcast. Take care. Okay, my friend, that's all I've got for you today. But before you go, 2 quick reminders. Number 1, if we're not already friends on Instagram, let's get connected. You can find me as Leading Yourself Podcast. Number 2, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am incredibly grateful that you're in this journey with me. I want to leave you with one last thought. I want to remind you that you're destined for more and that every step that you take brings you closer to becoming that best version of yourself. Embrace each day as a chance to learn, grow, and chase your dreams. The world needs you to shine brightly, so go out and show up fully and authentically. Take care, and I'll see you next time.